This is the concierge, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and in this week's episode, I'm actually going to be doing more of like a recap of the week, because a lot of things happened, and also like a little, I would say like a half review of the new restaurant, Carbone Riviera, over at the Bellagio, because I really got, after going to that restaurant, I got really energized about new restaurants, trying new things, seeing new places, especially here in Las Vegas. So a little bit of a recap of this last week, a couple different things, and hopefully you guys enjoy it, because I think it's going to be really fun, because my dad, my brother, and my cousin came into town for a convention, which I got to tag along with. Appreciate them for letting me come with them and sort of document it. And I also ended up going to Delilah's again, but really fun experience over there. Watched national championship game, and I could tell you about how Bottle Blonde did, and kind of what we have coming up in the week as well. So hopefully you guys stick around, and we're going to sort of recap the weekend right here on Concierge Confidential. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and dive into the week that was. So I'm actually going to go ahead and start with my review of Carbone Riviera. So many of you have probably heard of the new restaurant at the Bellagio with the, big giant mega yacht. That's not a mega yacht. It's a baby yacht, mini yacht, as they're calling it, that actually is, speeds around the entire lake. I think they say it's like $5,000 if you want to do it. Something, it's pretty up there. If you actually want to go on the boat. So that's pretty cool. The yacht, excuse me. So what happened was I was actually going to go and do some research. This had to be on, I want to say it was like on a Wednesday. And I actually ended up going in to the Bellagio because I wanted to check out Mayfair Supper Club's new entertainment program, which I still haven't done yet, but they were closed for a private event, which really sucked. I was so angry because I knew it was going to happen. I was like, I bet they're closed for a convention event or something. And that's exactly what happened. So I was kind of meandering around for a minute, and I was like, hey, I haven't been to this new place yet. Let me go try it out. I think it was a Tuesday, actually. So there I go over to the space that used to be Picasso. So if you don't know where Carbone Riviera is, you actually have to go into the mall area of the Bellagio. And then if you look to your right, like towards the fountains, right as you pass Harry Winston, there's escalators going down. It's pretty clearly marked, but that's what takes you to Prime Steakhouse as well as Carbone Riviera. And then you go down, and then there you go. So when I got down there, it's a beautiful entrance, and you kind of have to do this the same way that I do when I go to Delilah's. You kind of have to blow past the host at the front desk, because they actually have two. They have sort of a check-in person at the front before you go in the doors, and then you go in the doors, and to the right, you have the hostess stand. So the one that's outside kind of depends like how aggressive they are, because I've done this twice now, and once I went in, I said, I'm just going to have a drink at the bar. And I have to say, this is much easier to do with one person. And they were like, oh, let me go check and see what there's available. There was a seat available, so I ended up sitting at the bar. The room itself is actually, it's very interesting because the room itself is very big vertically. It's very vaulted, old school Bellagio room where it's just sort of like this big square. But they have big, giant, beautiful windows that actually open up. You can actually open the giant doors that you can go outside, and that's actually where they have much of their seating is actually outside on this outdoor like patio situation they got going on the outside. So it actually kind of floats on the water. It's not actually a patio, but it floats. It's kind of an interesting thing. But the room itself is beautiful. They still have a lot of the touches that they had from Picasso, but it still has sort of that new, fresh look to it. Beautiful bar that actually looks out to the fountains. Really, I love the way they designed this bar, because I think more bars that have that are around the around the Bellagio fountains should be situated where the patron is actually looking out to the bar. Out to the bar. It's a novel idea, I know. Out to the Bellagio fountains. So we were able to sit, They have a very, very pretty bar, and then actually has windows that you can look out and see the fountains. And they're actually situated in an interesting spot on that part of the lake where you can look over to the left into the main part of the restaurant, and you can see the oarsmen, which are the water fountains that dance, and then they have the big super shooters that come out behind the bartenders. So that was really cool. So one of my pet peeves about the Bellagio is that property-wide, they have probably the worst bartenders. And I've said this on other pods, but I've also talked to other bartenders about this, especially ones that have been in the city for a while. And they say, well, it's because they're union. And that's exactly the right way to say that, because the thing is that they're not afraid to get, to lose their job. They have all this seniority at those properties. They've been there for over 35 years essentially, or 25 years, and they're not afraid. But when you go to Carbone Riviera, I have to say the bartenders were very, very good. They were able to do a lot of different cocktails. I ended up getting an old fashioned to start, then I ended up with an amaretto sour that looked beautiful. If you actually want to see what any of this stuff looks like, go and check out our Instagram page, conciergeconfidential_LV, if you want to see what it actually looks like, which was beautiful. And then I wasn't really planning on doing a whole dinner there, so I just ended up getting their rigatoni alla vodka, or their spicy rigatoni, their spicy rig. Spicy rig is how they do it there, because it's actually one of their signature items from their original restaurant, which is Carbone over at the Aria. And of course they have one in New York, which is the actual first one, but it's a huge conglomerate of restaurants at this point, empire, if you will. And I wanted to try it because I wanted to see what everybody's talking about. And honestly, it's something that I usually wouldn't try because I don't like spicy stuff, to be honest. And usually spicy rigatoni, it is served with a vodka type sauce, which I'm not a huge fan of. Not saying that it was bad, just not a huge fan. And it came out, and before it actually came out, you get this huge food service. It's actually kind of crazy. It looks great on camera. I actually took a really good photo of it, and they give you these they're sort of not pretzel sticks. There's sesame seed sticks essentially, that are really good to try. They have focaccia bread, which actually has little things of tomato on top of it, which looked really pretty. I took the tomatoes off, just had the bread. Fantastic, and it was quite good. And then I also have the old fashioned, of course, which was served in a beautiful glass, beautifully presented, delicious. Their menu, in terms of the cocktails, is actually very straightforward. It's actually a very simple menu, to kind of my disappointment, because I thought they were going to go crazy and go big. But I guess the idea is that they're very classic. Their usual restaurant would be sort of classic New York Italian, but I would say that they're definitely leaning towards the more south of France Italian vibes because it's Riviera, so they want to lean into that seafood thing. But I don't know. I felt like their menu, their cocktail menu, was quite pedestrian, but their actual dinner menu is huge. Lots of items on the menu. And for what you think you're going in to this restaurant for, which is, very high end, it actually is a very doable menu. Obviously, they have very expensive things on the menu, like their lobster, 2-pound lobster pasta. And they also have a couple other very large, the steaks obviously are quite expensive. But they had some chicken it's chicken limon, but I just call it lemon chicken, which looked very doable. I actually would have got that, and by the hearing how they were explaining how it was prepared, totally would have ate that up. They have calamari on the menu, which is quite good. Obviously, it's very straightforward, but everything was very doable in terms of pricing. Again, more than normal, but when you live in this town, you find that these places tend to be astronomically high in terms of pricing, but it actually wasn't too bad, so I was actually very happy that I stopped by. But the room itself is beautiful. It's very hard to get a reservation in there. But here's sort of the thing, because you guys have heard me talk about when you want to go to a restaurant that's really exclusive, that maybe you can tip somebody and go in. That sort of works. So I was with my dad, and my brother had come into town, which we're gonna go back and forth in this story, and you walk in. And we blow past the first guy, which, again, he didn't like that very much. And, again, this is actually maybe, generalizing as well. Women are, way cooler with you doing that. Hostesses are way cooler with you just, walking in. And again, I don't know, like, this is obviously a way bigger conversation to have, but I tend to, that's a little bit easier to do when you're walking past a woman, which sounds so terrible, like when I say that, but I don't mean it like in a derogatory way. It's just like cool. But like men have a real problem, like if you walk past them and don't say anything. Like I'll tell them like, oh, I'm just going, it's good to say something. It's like, I'm going into the bar. That's it. And I don't mean it like in a mean way. It's just, some people are just cool. Some people are just cooler than others. That's all I got to say. But anyway, so we walk in, and then you have these two hostesses who are actually behind the desk. And I said, oh, yeah, we're just going to the bar to have a drink. And it's not always to act rude. I'm not trying to be rude. But it's really to get past them because that is their job. Their job is to stop you, to not let you go in because they have a very, more high-end clientele sometimes. And you kind of got to walk past them and you kind of got to big time them, but you kind of have to know like there's a subtlety to it. My dad is not subtle. My dad doesn't understand like the cues of like when you have to give and take. And he's also not subtle in general. Like, he's like, oh, so like, do we give them the 20? Come on, let's tip them. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. That's not the way that this works. We're not at that point yet. The thing about tipping and like getting things is that you have to be reasonable. You have to be a reasonable person, unless you are Lady Gaga and you could tip $1,000 at some point, which they would never do that. They reserve stuff for her all the time. But you have to be a reasonable person. Like when I go to Delilah's and I, order my drink, hand my thing, I'll tip if I really want a seat at the bar, I'll tip them $20. So I'll give them my card and a 20, and I'll say, hey, if something opens up, just let me know. That is code for when something opens up, like reserve it for me. But there's a way of doing it. It's very polite. It's sort of like under the radar. It's not blatant in front of them, like, get me a seat, because they don't have to. That's not their job. So my dad has trouble with the idiosyncrasies of doing all that stuff, that it's, it's surgical, if you will. So, like, the hostess is like, all right, let me go check. And there were 3 of us, which, again, seating 3 people at a bar is much harder than seating 1. So she goes in and she says, we actually don't have any seats at the bar. Okay, cool, whatever. Walk out. And my dad's like, oh, do we tip him? No, because one, the hostesses are there. They're basically the police of the entire restaurant. Like, you guys have heard these on past episodes that the hostesses are, it's funny because in terms of the totem pole of the restaurant, they're probably like the lower on the list, like behind like the bartenders, the waiters, waitresses, the cooks, and the chefs. But they have like almost the most power over everybody because they hold that power of holding the list of where to seat people. So I was like, no, Dad, like that's not going to work. You can't kick somebody out of a chair that they're already in. Like, you can't do that. So we ended up going over to Lago, and it was fine. But overall, I had a really good time at Carbone Riviera when I went. I think I would say definitely worth it, especially if you're going out for like a special evening. It's kind of hard to make reservations right now, but if you're able to walk in and maybe have a cocktail right when they open, maybe if it's only 1 or 2 of you, definitely think it's worth having, a nice cocktail before a show or maybe after a show. I think it's a really great spot. So Carbone Riviera, really great. So with that, we're going to go and jump into the rest of the week, and that'll be more of a chronological order kind of thing. I know I kind of went back and forth, but just wanted to explain sort of the differences in that. So Carbone Riviera, highly recommend it. And if you want to check out our Instagram page for some pictures from that evening. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and dive into the week that was. So my cousin, my brother, and my dad were here for the World of Concrete, which is a huge convention held every January here in Las Vegas. It used to travel, but it's become essentially a thing that happens here every single... well, actually, it doesn't travel. There was one that was a mining expo that one traveled. And that was very cool to have here. My brothers went to that one. My brother and my dad went to that one, and it was where they had the Chilean miners like tube. They had that there. But with that being said, went to the World of Concrete. So we went to the World of Concrete on a Tuesday. They got here on a Monday, which was also the national championship for college football. So we really were excited to go check that out. They got into town, and then I ended up taking this. This is funny that this happened. And speaking of sports, we will be doing a Super Bowl YouTube video. Hopefully on Wednesday it should be released, of the best places to watch the Super Bowl, and also, pricings and that sort of thing, kind of how they look. Trying to do more, obviously more videos periodically on YouTube. But that will explain some places. I didn't skip out on some places like Caesar's Palace and Venetian and Wynn, that kind of thing, but I can explain those as we go along. But on Wednesday, we will have the video that goes out so you can actually see what the inside of these sports books look like before you possibly come to Las Vegas, or if you just want to understand what the feel is inside of a sports book. And there are also really good ways to see if that's the type of sports book that you want to go to. But with that being said, my dad gets into town, my brother gets into town. I meet them up. I meet up at the Bellagio where they were staying, and my dad really wanted to bet player props. So we ended up going to the Bellagio Sportsbook, which, is a BetMGM sportsbook essentially. And he goes up to the counter, and it's not our first time. We've obviously gambled before on sports. And he walks to the teller, and I was standing in the back somewhere with my brother, and she said that, oh yeah, we don't have player props because they're in college. I would like everybody to understand this, is that just because they say certain things in a sports book, doesn't mean that they're true. You don't have to believe them. I want everybody to know right now, until the law is changed, you can bet on player props for college players. It's still there. It sometimes depends on the state that you're in. That is sort of regulated, but that was a new thing that was introduced this year, 2025. So most places you're able to bet on player props, and obviously if you guys are betting online on DraftKings or FanDuel or wherever else that has what else has online, Caesars or BetMGM, you're probably going to be able to bet on player props depending on your jurisdiction. Nevada, we usually, when we have these big giant events like the Super Bowl, like the national championship game, we'll have player props available. So he comes back with me and says, oh, they don't have any player props. These are the ones they have. So I wanted to go to Westgate in general. I forget to do something. Can't remember what I was trying to do at Westgate. But I knew my dad was going to want to go over there, took him over there, and then lo and behold, they had player props. So if you do want to bet on player props, essentially every place will have them. BetMGM gets really stingy with them. They're really weird, very corporate, just like the rest of the company. But if you do go to Westgate or Circa, those are two places that we're going to for sure have one of the largest options in terms of player props, regular game props in general, when you want to bet on the Super Bowl if you're in town. So with that being said, took him there. He made some bets, all good to go. Then we made our way back to the Bellagio, where we ended up doing something else while we were waiting on sort of the game to start. We ended up going to one of the bars in one of the center bars, and it was fine, the Baccarat bar. And from there, we ended up going to the Bottled Blonde, which is actually on Las Vegas Boulevard, right next to the Old Red bar, which, again, not a huge fan of Old Red. So it was funny because we got there and sort of a line started, and it was two lines. It was one for people without reservations and one with people with reservations. The bottom floor was full, which the bottom floor is completely fine if you want to see any of the games. So typically the top floor, which is the third floor, usually opens about 4 or 5 o'clock. That's when you have to go up, and then obviously if you get up there early, only one side actually has chairs. The other side does not have chairs. We were able to get a seat at the bar. The thing with Bottled Blonde is, you've heard me talk about this before, Bottled Blonde is great if there is one game going on that you really want to watch. So I'm talking about, the World Series, the NCAA Men's Championship basketball game, the National Championship game for football, the Super Bowl. They are great because they can't mess it up. But I have been there on other days, the first weekend of college football. I've been there for another college football afternoon game. And both times when I went for those college football games, No idea what was going on. It's not a great sports bar when you're trying to watch games, multiple games, because they do have trouble switching them. You don't know who to talk to. It's a little unorganized. But when you have one game, it's very easy because you can't mess it up because there's only one game. So really great. They have a really good selection of beer, which is fantastic. I do think it's a great bar to go to for these particular reasons. Is it a good late night spot? I don't know. It's sort of 50-50 on whether or not it's a really great late night spot. I've gone there, I think, once on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock at night, and it was empty. So not sure about that, but I think they have really good beer. The staff is actually quite nice. They're very, very friendly. But again, it just comes to like sort of like the management of the TVs, which sometimes throws it off. But we started the night there, and from there, my dad and my brother ended up going back to the hotel. So me and my cousin don't hang out very often, so we ended up going to, this is sort of how the night started. So we started there, got a little tipsy there, and we're both staying on the Strip, so we don't have to actually drive, so that's nice that we can walk places. From there, went over to Planet Hollywood, $15 blackjack, very, very nice that they had that available, and my cousin started playing blackjack with a wonderful gentleman named, let me get this right, Z was his actual name on his name tag. We did okay there, not too shabby. And from there, we didn't want the night to end, so we ended up going over to I sort of took him on the tour of the speakeasies. So from there, we ended up going to Cosmopolitan, where we ended up going to the Ghost Donkey, which Ghost Donkey was very fun, and it was later at night, so we were really hungry, so we ended up getting their truffle nachos, which were very tasty. They're about $20, and we had one cocktail and the wonderful nachos themselves, and loved showing him it. I really love just like showing people Ghost Donkey. It's the coolest of all the speakeasies at Cosmopolitan. It's also sometimes like it can be crowded in there, but like in a cool way. I don't like going to the ski lodge, which the ski lodge is more towards the back, essentially where the buffet is, Wicked Spoon. And I hate when there's a line because then it ruins the whole like thing that it's a speakeasy. I hate lines outside of speakeasies. I really, really hate it. It's one of the most annoying things in the world because that's all the fun. So what I love about Ghost Donkey, it's not a far walk to the back of the casino and then getting disappointed. Ghost Donkey, it's right there. Bang, you go in, look around, have a cocktail, maybe two, who knows. From there, by the way, if you've never seen Ghost Donkey, make sure you go check it out on all of our socials. It's a really fun thing to discover. It's fantastic. But they specifically do mezcal and tequila cocktails. They do have one whiskey behind the bar and typically one vodka behind the bar. So if you have a friend who like can't do tequila or mezcal, they do have sort of like one out for you while you're there. So from there, we kind of wanted to keep the night going. I know this sounds like a crazy night because it kind of was. So then we ended up going to the barbershop because it was right there. I do not like the barbershop by myself, but I have to say its hit rate when I am with people, it is very fun. There was no line outside the door, which I was very, very excited about. So, I mean, it was Monday, so I guess. But it was packed on the inside. When you got inside of the barbershop, granted, is because it is typically very busy, but it was nice because it was sort of like a nice level of amount of busy. Got drinks at the bar. They had live band was going, especially when you go late. Barbershop is a great spot to end up later in the night. Do not go there earlier in the day. Like, don't go there like at 7. Because they're usually just tuning their guitars for like 3 hours. It's really boring. I don't think it's as fun. Not as busy, which is nice because you can able to sort of like walk around. But when you go later in the evening, like I said, like around 11:15, you get the energy already there. Like you walk in and boom, you're there. And then, so we got some cocktails and then, we're talking to some people. It was really fun. And then we ended up listening to the band there. They had a three-piece band with guitar player who also sang, a bass player, and then the drummer, obviously. And it was so much fun. They play all these classics. They have everything from like the 80s, the 90s, early 2000s rock, very listenable. It was so much fun. You dance a little bit. It is a little bit crazy on the inside, but like just the right amount. I think the barbershop, I'm kind of turning my head around on it, that it's a great place to end up, and it's a great place to go with a group. Not great if you're by yourself. It's a little bit weird if you are by yourself. And I'm somebody who goes to a lot of things, solo. But when you go with somebody else, like my cousin, or like, a group of 4 people, it's great. Anything larger than that, it's a little bit too small. Like if you come with like 10 people, you guys are going to get lost. You're going to have to splinter. It's really hard to keep everybody together. But with like 3 people, it's very doable inside of there. It's tight, so if you're claustrophobic, this is not the spot for you. But really great time at the barbershop at the Cosmopolitan. Fantastic job, A+ effort, and no cover charge, so that was even better. So after that, the night was over. We didn't do anything else the rest of the night, I promise. So we actually ended up waking up, and then we ended up going to the World of Concrete, which is on Tuesday. So we ended up going to the World of Concrete, which is a huge convention inside of the convention center. And this is sort of a general convention topic, is that the monorail, which I rode today because I was doing research for the sportsbook thing, is very good, especially if you're going to the convention center. If you are going to the convention center, it is 1,000% worth getting a monorail pass for the entire day or however long you're here and going to the convention center via the tram. It's a great place to see. It's a great way to see sort of the city. You can see like that side of the Las Vegas Strip. And then also it's probably the best way to see the actual sphere itself. In the daytime, it's not as good because obviously it's light outside, so you get to see the lights. But if you go at nighttime, this is actually a great ride. I think the sphere has actually added so much value to riding the monorail because the monorail rides right next to it and it sort of like reveals it. So like this big giant thing. And it's really, really cool. I would say that the monorail itself is somewhat safe, especially if you're riding in the daytime. There's no problem. At nighttime, I'm assuming it would get a little bit sketchier around, Sahara and that sort of area. But while I was on it, I didn't feel like super unsafe. It's very secure, like that particular area. There's security guards. So the monorail itself, quite safe. And I 1,000% recommend using it to get to the convention center, especially if the convention center has outdoor exhibits, because the outdoor exhibits take up most of where the parking is located, and where the old parking is now more convention center. So there is very, very limited parking at the convention center. We did not utilize the monorail when we went to the convention center. We ended up parking. We actually had to park at the West Gate, and because it was an event day, they actually charged us $50 for that event, or event parking, which super annoying. And even though it is somewhat close, it is still a little bit of a walk to go from the Westgate over to the convention center. So it's a bit of a walk. It's much more worth it if you grab a monorail ticket and get off at the convention center, where it is a much easier walk into the actual convention space. It's a very large convention, so we walked through the convention center for, essentially half the day. Lots of different tech stuff. I know a lot of people who've been to conventions a lot. What should you expect when you go to a convention in Las Vegas? If you are at the convention center, you are at the convention center. You are not really close to any other hotels other than the Westgate. So it is going to be a long day. They do have lots of places inside the convention center to eat. So they're very, quick grab and go. They have, sodas. Sometimes the convention center will provide like bars, but it does depend. They're usually stand-up bars that have to be brought in. Most of the places that are built in are like sandwich shops, pizza spots, salad, Mediterranean. But again, they're like sort of fast food places. They had a Quiznos, which I didn't know Quiznos was still like a brand. So shout out Quiznos. But they do have plenty of like water for purchase, sodas for purchase, all that good stuff. And of course, they have all the bathrooms and things, of course, as well. I do recommend that you end up going to, if you have like a satellite pickup for your badges, to always do that. That's always a really good thing to do because usually the lines are much shorter. Try not to get them the day of, although it's usually not as much of a problem, especially if it's a smaller convention. If it is a larger convention, it can sometimes be a little bit of a wait to have to pick up your badges. But it's good to have your badges, especially if they let you know, like, hey, like you get like these special discounts and that kind of thing. It doesn't happen as often as it used to. But, like, if you have a badge on, take it off, because you don't want to be that guy, because then we all know who you are. But we ended up doing that, ended up walking back to Westgate after my dad was able to throw little craps. The Westgate does have $10 craps, which is quite nice. $10 craps, $10 blackjack. Westgate, as much as we kind of like to joke about it, is actually quite an affordable spot. I also, when I was walking around today, was at Bally's for the first time. Bally's, not terrible. I have to say, Bally's, they've redone all the inside. Very doable. Would highly recommend it if you're looking for lower limit gambling. I did see a $10 craps table. I saw a $15 craps table. Saw a $10 and $15 blackjack, which is quite nice. Not a bad casino. It's sort of shotgun style, so everything's sort of like narrow. Not narrow. It's basically like one straight shot. Other than other places that are sort of like they tentacle out, kind of like Caesar's Palace, which kind of just goes out and away. But Bally's, quite good. Westgate, good gambling. The people were very nice. I have to say the craps dealers, great crapsters. They were really nice to my dad. So I was really appreciative of that. Did end up going to the Bellagio, where we ended up trying to get into Carbone Riviera, but my dad was playing craps. Did very, very well. I think he got tipped like $100 from another guy for throwing the dice pretty good. High limits, man. Got to say, high limits at the Bellagio, like kind of not worth it to go during conventions because everybody's there. But you can't say anything because, like, if your casino is full and you have high limit and it's still full with people gambling, I can't knock you. I can't knock you for it. Although Ari, I'll knock you all the time because you guys are annoying. But when we have conventions, it is busy, 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 man, and it's crazy. So with that being said, and then, oh my goodness, almost missed the best part. So we ended up actually going and doing a couple events outside of the convention where my dad's company has a really long relationship with a couple different suppliers, which one supplier we went to Top Golf, which we go every single year. Great food. Top Golf, great place to have like any events and stuff. I don't get paid by them to say that. I'm just telling you that's a good place to do it. Had barbecue, which is fantastic for the hangover that I was having. And then after that, we ended up going to Allegiant Stadium for a party that they were having inside of Allegiant Stadium, not on the field, unfortunately, but we were able to actually do the tour that you usually would do if you were here for just doing a regular tour of Allegiant Stadium, which you can do. Allegiant Stadium tours, which I think are between $25 and $35, and really great stuff. You see, I've been in Allegiant Stadium twice for concerts. And I've never seen the different areas that they take you to. They take you to all the different luxury boxes and the suites. We didn't go into any luxury boxes because it was later in the evening, but we were able to actually see the outside of the luxury boxes and sort of like that area, the different the different, they call them the Champions Club, but the different club levels. So many of them, didn't know there were that many. We saw the Lombardi trophies, which are really cool that they have. I think they had 3 of them. And then they also showed us the press conference area. They showed us the locker room, which was really cool. And then they ended up taking us to the field level, which was really cool to see the field. They explained sort of how all the field stuff works. We're able to take really good pictures. We took us to the big giant torch and then into the actual party itself, which was in one of the bar areas of the club level, and it was fantastic. And they had really good food. It was really tasty. And then, oh my goodness, I'm glad that I brought this up. So that was the end of the party. The party was a party. It was really cool. But then we ended up going and trying to get back to the Bellagio, and me and my brother ended up with a really awesome Uber driver. Sorry, I'm just checking the battery on this. I got enough time to tell this story. We ended up with this cool Uber driver, which when I typed in his name and his license plate, I thought it was his name. It's just his license plate said Russian. And then his name was not Ivan. It was Dmitry. It was great. And he was driving a Cadillac, which honestly, guys, it was just like a $17 Uber ride. Like, it wasn't like we went out of this world, but we ended up getting it. And it was funny because we were waiting outside, and then the lady that was standing next to us, who was also ordering an Uber, who was trying to strike a conversation with my brother, who's Mr. Personality, she told him, like, oh, our guy is 5 stars. What is your guy? Like, we couldn't figure it out. So then we get into the actual, it was an Escalade, which was sick. So we get into the Escalade leather. It's sweet. And the guy does not talk a lot. And my brother was talking, we were talking back and forth. It's like, oh, like, should we stay at Bellagio? Should we go to Aria, Cosmo? We don't know where to gamble at. And then the Uber driver, Dimitri, was like, oh, you want to gamble? I'd stay at the Bellagio. It's much better there. Sick. That's where we're going. So we were going there anyways. But anyway, so as we're kind of keep going, we go down the back roads. We're basically on the road on it's not Harmon. Is it Harmon? It's Harmon, where you go over the freeway, and then Cosmopolitan is to your left, Aria is to your right on the side street, and then right by where there's essentially a fire department. And he said you could see that it was backed up. There's lots of traffic because it's busy day. He goes, we're going to, I'll take you this way. I swear this is how he sounded. He says, I'll take you this way. I take lots of Russian VIPs, and they don't like to stay in traffic. So basically we book it to we go left, and we go through where it says employees and deliveries only. Zip by that. We end up in a back empty lot that I've seen many times from the tram. And I was like, oh, this is where we are. We go this way. He pops out, and boom, we're in the main drive of the Bellagio, skipping all the traffic. And he says, "Yes, I don't stay in traffic." He's like, "That's why I diamond member." He's like, "That's why I diamond level in Uber." I wanted to Uber back to Allegiant Stadium just so we could tell that lady that we had a diamond level Uber driver. Sick. Dimitri is awesome. So I want to squeeze in this last little bit of story. Last story really quick. I gotta say, New York women might be where it's at. So I went to Delilah's on Friday because I was trying to just get back in the swing of things and kind of see what's going on, because it's convention season, everything's going on, AVNs, whatever. You never know who you're gonna meet. Phil Hellmuth, saw him, that was cool. But I was sitting there, and these two women were talking back and forth to each other, and then one of the women walked away. So I, decided to, introduce myself. I was like, oh, what do you, Vouv, that's very nice. It was a champagne, and we started talking, and these women were so smart. And then they also loved movies, which with me, that's to me, that's like heroin. It's just God, you're talking. Although I've never done it. I never done it. It's just an expression where I was just like, oh my God, they're blowing my mind right now. And then one of the girls ended up saying, I'm not saying their names because, they didn't ask to be on the podcast. But one of them said, well, what did you think of Begonia? And that movie is super popular in the movie sort of world, not very much in the general public. If I said, hey, have you seen Begonia? People would be like, what? So she brought it up, and I was like, oh my God, this woman is amazing. And they had all these thoughts on The Devil Wears Prada 2, which I brought up, and they knew was coming in. They knew, Pretty Woman, obviously, because we were talking about polka dots. And overall, just a beautiful conversation. It was great. Sometimes you go out, and the thing is yes, guys, I know you come to Vegas, you're trying to score and whatever. But the thing is that sometimes you just got to, you find somebody you want to talk to, for most of the night. And it's great. It really makes going out really, really fun. And I really had a good time at Delilah's just talking to them and having this conversation. And they were great. And follow each other on Instagram, all this stuff. And, talking about things, talked about LA, difference between LA and New York. And it was overall just a really fun night. So I'm really glad that happened. That was great. So it was really fun. And then I was able to see Alex, who's the bartender, saw Jess, obviously, who's a beautiful bartender at Delilah's. Really had a great time. Really good amount of people at that spot. One guy got kicked out, so that's always nice, how it is. I didn't. He did, though. He definitely deserved to be kicked out. But It was great. So overall, really successful week in Las Vegas. I had a really great time. Hopefully that helped you guys out a little bit, just sort of recapping the week. A lot of stuff happened, but I had a really good time. Hopefully you guys, enjoyed listening to it. But again, make sure you guys are on the lookout for Wednesday on YouTube. It's Concierge Confidential on YouTube, or Concierge Confidential LV, or Concierge Confidential Las Vegas. I think that's what it is. Make sure you check it out. It's going to be our sort of guide to the Super Bowl and all the different spots to watch it in sports books, restaurants, lounges, all that good stuff, and how to do it. So make sure you check that out. It's on Wednesday. I'll probably do on Thursday podcast about that as well. So make sure you stay tuned. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate it. Follow us on all of our socials, Concierge Confidential _LV on Instagram, as well as Brian _Ortega26 on Instagram, and at Keys to Vegas on TikTok. So thanks again, everybody. If you see me out in town, which you probably will, if you see me, come up and say hello. But remember, keep it confidential.